Welcome to episode 61 of the Talking Friars podcast. Ben Fadden here, coming to you after the Padres were able to scratch out one win in this series. So they end up not getting swept. They avoid that. They end up winning the final game of this series. The first two games weren't really pretty. The last game wasn't really pretty. They still gave up 6 runs, but they were able to close it out. With Melanson in the ninth, and then Ross Detweiler, who's giving me heart attacks in the 10th because he just could not throw strikes. He was, having 3-0 counts to like every batter, and the Giants just kept helping him out by swinging at 3-1 pitches and popping him up with Brandon Belt and Chris Bryant. So thanks to them, but a lot to talk about. There's some organizational movement that happened over this past series. And well, I guess we can start there. And again, just my thoughts on what's happened, what's coming up next. And one thing that kind of a teaser here, one thing I'll talk about that the Padres showed today that proved that they've given up on making the playoffs. So we'll get to that as well. Let's start off. So on Tuesday, the Padres parted ways with Sam Geaney, who was the Padres farm director for a while, for like 7 years. He was the farm director. AJ Preller announced that his contract would not be renewed. Tingler, that was the first, bullet point of this. I wrote a story on Gaslamp Ball about if Geaney, deserved this, if he deserved to, not have his contract renewed, because he, his job as the farm director, most of it, with player development, scouting a little bit, I would think, just making sure that players are developing. I think he's done a pretty dang good job of that. His track record wise, again, you can look up the article I wrote on Gaslamp Ball about that. But because his track record, I mean, the names that coming off, a lot of these guys have been traded, but he still did his job by developing the players to make them look good for other clubs who then wanted those players in return, for the Padres to get the Blake Snells and the Emilio Pagans and the Yu Darvishes and the Mike Clevingers of the world and the Austin Nolas of the world and Trent Grisham and guys like that. Geaney was a big part in doing that, in making those, helping those players be what they were, so that they, that the Padres could get value back in trades, and that those prospects would look good, in possible trades. So, I mean, some names that he, helped develop: Ty France, Taylor Trammell a little bit, Hunter Renfroe, Manuel Margot, all of these guys have been traded. But, Luis Patino, Blake Hunt, Cole Wilcox, Mejia a little bit, Francisco Mejia, Franmil Reyes to a degree. So and that's just a little bit. That's just a little bit of the names. I haven't even really gotten to much, a whole lot. Luis Arias I haven't even mentioned. And his big project, his big success story, Fernando Tatis Jr., who's going to go down as one of the best Padres to ever be in a Padre uniform. And like he said, if he's on this track and he stays healthy, he's probably going to have a statue at Petco Park. And Geaney was a really big part in the development of Fernando, and I'm sure him and Preller had a lot of conversations regarding Fernando. So that's his big success story, but they do part ways with him. And it was announced before Wednesday's game that the guy replacing Geaney as the farm director would be Riley Westman, who's also been with the organization. So that was kind of different. It was weird. I'm not really fully on board with. They're not bringing in a new guy to be the farm director. So that's why I was kind of like, okay, why are they letting Geaney go then? Because if you're not bringing a new guy, you're just shuffling the deck. And scouting and development wasn't even like their big problem. You could point to Mackenzie Gore as like a reason I wrote in the article about maybe that might have been one of the sticking points. It's taken way too long for Gore to develop and even be close to the big leagues. He was sent down to Peoria because of his mechanics. Maybe they thought that, hey, why did it take so long for the Padres and the development people to get with McKenzie and say, hey, you want to pitch in the big leagues, you're going to have to refine some things. So that might have been a sticking point. But I thought that, Keeney's track record is pretty good. But I don't really understand the whole reshuffling thing of the deck, with Mark Connor being a special assistant now instead of the amateur scouting director. And now they're just loading more work on Chris Kemp's plate, who's now in charge of both international scouting, which is what he was doing, and the amateur scouting with a draft and all that. That's a lot on his plate. I'm not saying that he doesn't have assistants, and I'm not saying that Mark Connor will probably still help him, but I didn't really understand that because Mark Connor's also had a good track record. He drafted Gore. He drafted Robert Hassel III, who looks really, really good. He drafted James Wood this past year and Jackson Merrill, and Renfro and who else? I'm kind of blanking right now, but Ryan Weathers, Cal Quantrill, who's another guy that got traded, but he was developed and he was drafted. So he had a good track record as well. So I'm not quite sure what the reshuffling of the deck does and what impact that'll really have. And it kind of seemed like this was like, there's been a lot, going on with the Padres, with Jace Tingler's job security and Tatis and Manny thing with them getting in a fight, that they're kind of like, hey, there's a lot going on here. Now let's focus over here. We're going to make some moves here. Focus on that so you don't have your attention on that. But whatever, I guess we'll see. I guess we can see, years down the road what those moves, really did. But right now, that those moves don't really provide much of a big impact or a different impact for me, at least. Before Tuesday's game, Jace Tingler said pregame that he doesn't think that he lost the clubhouse, which is absolutely hilarious because while Jace seems like a stand-up guy and I know his job is to, make everything, look good about the franchise and the roster and what's going on behind the scenes. But to say that that you haven't lost the clubhouse when Kevin Acee literally reported that it seems like everyone doesn't like you and everyone thinks that you're not the leader that they needed or wanted, and that's in quotes, that Acee said. The fact that he doesn't have sway in, stopping the whole Manny Tatis thing or preventing that from happening. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear you've lost the clubhouse, Jace. I don't understand. I get what else he's supposed to say. Yes, I've lost the clubhouse. That's like welcoming Preller to walk down to Tingler's office and to fire him. So I understand that he's not going to, deny that. But so that was kind of interesting that he, said up front, I don't think I've lost the clubhouse when it's pretty clear that he has. And another thing that I wrote on Gasnet Ball, quick news piece, Bruce Bochy told Sportico's Barry Bloom this week that he's leaving the door open to managing next season, and that includes with the Padres. Ron Fowler did contact Bruce Bochy before they hired Tingler after they fired Green, and that season ended with Barajas being the interim manager. He contacted Bochy shortly after Bochy retired from being the Giants manager to just see Godge's interest. Bochy, wanted to just take some time away. But he said that he's never, the mentality that he has is never say never. And so he is leaving the door open. Now, if the Padres, fire Tingler, which they need to do, I think, and they come to Bochy and say, hey, we want you to be our manager, maybe I don't know if that's all it takes is that, Bochy will just say, yeah, I'll be the manager, especially when he's in retirement and all that. Maybe you have to be managing against the Giants, the team that he's, a hero for, 3-time World Series manager champion there. Maybe it'll take a little more than that. Um, I think, I mean, I think if Bochy was hired, I think one positive, at least for Bochy, and maybe for me and Padre fans, is that he would have pretty much ultimate control over the lineup. The front office, I feel like, has a lot of say with Tingler. Tingler seems like a yes man to Preller in the front office. I feel like the front office has a lot of say. It's different lineups, it seems like, every single day, and Bruce Bochy's not that guy. So I think if he is hired, I think you're going to see a consistent lineup. And I think Bochy, like Joe Madden and guys like that, they'll have control over the lineup, which could be a positive for the Padres going forward. I'm more of a Buck Showalter guy because maybe that's because I've seen him on MLB Network and stuff, and I've seen that he's evolved and he's, just his personality, and Manny loves him, and a lot of, there's a lot of Orioles coaches on the staff of Bobby Dickerson and Wayne Kirby, so I think that could work well. And Ryan Flaherty, so I'd be more of a Buck Showalter type guy, but I definitely love having Bochy as the manager. Certainly not opposed to that. So that's a little bit of news. Prior to the series even started, Game 1, Padres lost 6-5. This is a game that they should have won. They were up 4-1 at one point. I should mention that Manny and Tatis, by the way, they did apologize to the fans, and they talked with the media, impromptu media press conference, if you will, after batting practice before the game started. They apologized, said that fans didn't need to see that, and the emotions got the better of them, which it did. And Jake Garrett was designated for assignment, to the happiness of a lot of Padre fans. Javi Garrett was reinstated. Used to be a shortstop. Now he throws upper 90s, and he's a talented arm, obviously, with upper 90s fastball, but just the command, I feel like he leaves a lot of pitches over the plate, which we saw in the second game, I believe, is when he pitched. But for Jake Arrieta, geez, that was a really bad signing. I get that they needed arms, they needed length, they need something. But, what do you expect? This guy, talk about stealing money. That's pretty much what it was. He exited 2 of his 4 starts with an injury, the last one with the groin, which is the same as Snell's injury. And then he was reportedly seen the next day at Torrey Pines golf course. So you can play golf, but then you can't, pitch. That was just a bad look on Jake Arrieta's part. And especially when the Padres aren't in it now, and, giving up 3 runs. He only got 1 out against the Cardinals this past weekend. The Padre fans like myself, we were pretty glad to see him go because he was irrelevant, especially now he was just a lot of baggage, especially now with the whole golf course thing and the team not contending. There's no need for him when he's hurt. So as for the game, again, the Padres are up. They hit 4 home runs in this game. Machado homered twice. Tommy Pham homered. Austin Nola homered. But they still found a way to lose the game. Melanson came in the 9th. And he didn't pitch bad. Usually when he comes in the 9th in a non-save situation, I don't feel good. I didn't really feel good going in, but it wasn't his fault. It wasn't like that Reds game where they start, where he gave up 4 runs and they ended up winning the game on the Carrotine walk-off, but he just wasn't sharp. This wasn't the case. It was 3 bloop singles, the Lamonte Wade single that tipped off of Fernando's glove and that allowed Brandon Belt to score. That was a 65-mile-an-hour exit velocity. He was making, quality pitches, so I'm not going to get on him for that, but it's still frustrating when you had a 4-1 lead. You hit 4 home runs in the game and you lost. Those are games you're supposed to win, and the Padres just didn't do that. In the 9th inning, first and second, Manny grounds into a double play. It was hit hard, and Padres' luck, nothing has been going right for them, it seems like. And Brandon Belt bobbled it. It went right back to him, and they were able to turn the double play. Game over. Padres fell to 76-74, 5 games back in the second wild card, and the season's pretty much over then. It was already over, I felt like, when they got swept by the Cardinals, and the Cardinals won again when the Padres had the off day, so they were only 4 games. They were now 4 games back instead of 3.5 back, but then they were 5 games back after this Padres-Giants loss on Tuesday. Before Wednesday's game, like I mentioned, Jeff Passan reported that Mark Connor out as scouting director, Chris Kemp, the new amateur scouting director, as well as the international scouting director, and Riley Westman, the new farm director. Again, I mentioned that talking about it at the top, didn't really understand the reshuffling when guys are already in the organization. I didn't think Gainey, I'm not in the front office, obviously, but I thought that he had a pretty good track record. In the development, yeah, you could point to Gore, but the development, the scouting, that isn't even the Padres' problem. Strong farm system. I know it's not as strong now, but it's because they emptied it a lot with trades for Snell and Darvish and Musgrove and Pagan and Adams and Nola and a lot of Grisham, a lot of guys that they emptied the farm system to get. And I'm not going to complain because those guys on paper put us in a position to go, contend for a World Series. It just didn't happen this year for a variety of factors, for a variety of reasons, excuse me. But let's move on to game 2. Padres lost this one. They ended up giving up 8 runs, not surprisingly. Vince Velasquez started this game, loaded the bases to start, then gave up a bases clearing double to Chris Bryant in the right center field gap. Padres down 3-0 early, and they wouldn't recover. They had some fight in them. They were down a lot of runs. They gave 5 combined runs in the 6th and 7th innings, but they came back. They ended up losing just by 2 runs instead of by way more than that. In the highlight of this game, Fernando Tatis Jr. gets his 40th home run of the season. His last home run was against the Giants last week at Oracle Park in that last game of the series, where they scored, I think, 9 or 7 runs, one of the two. So it was good to finally see him get a home run again. He has 40 on the year, so I don't want to say finally, but 40 home runs. That's the highlight. It happened in the bottom of the 7th, went 393 feet, 106 plus mile per hour exit velocity. He's in the 40-25 club. People love to say 40-20, 40 homers, 20 stolen bases, but he's in the 40-25 club this year. And that's just, that just shows off his skill set, power, what he can do on the base pass, getting into scoring position. Sometimes he's a little reckless on the, base pass that we saw against Oakland when he subluxated his shoulder. But absolutely love to see him hit that 40th home run. The season's over, so season's essentially over. So, that's pretty much what we're rooting for now, is just to see Fernando hopefully go win an MVP. And for him, for the MVP, I think he's still the MVP. I know you can argue Bryce Harper, you can argue Joey Votto, you can argue Max Muncy. Max Muncy might have a better case in terms of the team, valuable part of it, because, the Dodgers are going to be in the playoffs, and the Phillies might be in the playoffs, and the Reds don't look like they're going to be in the playoffs, but they're probably going to finish ahead of the Padres, in the wild card standings. But there's been plenty of examples recently, of players that have won the MVP, mainly Mike Trout, who the team didn't make the playoffs. It's just the best player award, and Fernando has been, I think, the best player in the National League this season. He already has a WAR over 6, so he's worth 6 wins more than a replacement player. That's an MVP caliber player, according to Baseball Reference. Again, 40 home runs, 25 stolen bases, and I think when you talk about valuable, this team, I get that they're not going to be in the playoffs, but imagine where this team would be without him. He's missed, over 30 games with the subluxations and all that, but he's been so valuable to this team. When he's not on the field and they have to have Jake Cronenworth at short because they don't want Ha-Seong Kim in the order, in the lineup, that's forced Eric Hosmer to play first base a lot. And Eric Hosmer is not as good at an offense, obviously, as Fernando Tatis Jr., because that's who you're comparing to, because Jake's going to be in the lineup either way. Frazier's probably going to be in the lineup either way. But when Tatis isn't in there, you're comparing Tatis and Hosmer. It's not even close. So and then another aspect of it is, changing positions. He could have easily said, no, I'm not going to the outfield, but he went to the outfield because his team was in the race, and he understood that the Padres were, trying in Tatis's best interest to keep him healthy, and the team's best interest. When he's on the field, they have a better chance of winning. It's as simple as that. And so he literally moved to the outfield in the middle of the season and did pretty well out there. I get that, in center field last weekend against the Cardinals, he dropped that easy pop-up that I talked about in that Cardinals recap episode. But he did pretty well out there. He hosed a runner from right field, obviously the strong arm. And then he's moved back to shortstop, and he had a rocky start at the beginning of the year. Don't get me wrong. Defensively, it was, it seemed like he had the yips at times throwing wise, but he definitely improved defensively, and I think at shortstop, and he did well in the outfield. And the fact that he moved different positions to help the team out, and the fact that he's done, had this great offensive season, he's still the MVP for me. I get you can call me biased, but that's where I stand on the NL MVP conversation. Tatis became, after that 40th home run, he became the 5th Padre ever in franchise history to hit 40 home runs. A cool trivia question to ask your friends, in 20 years or whatnot. Who are the other 4 players that have done that? Other than Tatis, Phil Nevin, Adrian Gonzalez, Ken Caminiti, and Greg Vaughn. So there you go. Pretty impressive stuff from Fernando. This was the Padres' 5th straight loss, again, losing 8-6. They had some fight in them going into the 9th. It was 8-4. They scored 2 more runs. But when you give up 8 runs, you're not going to win many games. So that's that. Padres fell to 76-75 after that loss. And moving on to Thursday's game, they do end up winning this game, which was good to see. I know that probably fans don't have as much of an interest in watching the team now that the games don't matter. But I guess the Padres can still play spoiler. They're still mathematically in it. But going into Thursday's game, they'd had to go on 11-0, and the Cardinals would have to go 5-6 just for the Padres to play a tiebreaker game to get into the wild card game. So essentially impossible. When you're playing the Giants, the Dodgers, the Braves, you're not going 11-0, especially when the pitching is the way it is with Paddock hurt, Lamet not starting, Snell hurt, Arrieta's gone, Vince Velasquez giving up 5 runs a start, Ryan Weathers in the bullpen. Although he did pitch well this past series with 3, shutout innings after Vince Velasquez on Wednesday, so good for him. But especially with the pitching, it's impossible for that scenario to occur. I talked about the teaser about the move that the Padres made today that, proved that they've given up, postseason hopes, is Manny Machado was not in the starting lineup, did not play in the 9th inning, in the extra innings where it was like, this might be a good pinch hitting situation. He didn't have his jersey on. He was at the end of the bench just with a brown shirt on watching. He did not, so he wasn't in the lineup for the first time since June 17th, I believe. He's a grinder, plays every day. And if they were in a playoff race, if Tingler, in the front office tried to not put Machado in the lineup, he'd walk into Tingler's office and say, look, we have 2 weeks left. I can rest when our season's over. Put me in the dang lineup. But obviously that didn't happen because they're out of it. And simply the Padres, if they were not out of it, they were still fighting for a playoff spot, he'd be in the lineup. So that's that. That's, the one clue where they've given up. They're still 6 games back after this win. They had a 4-run first inning. Grisham and Kim hit back-to-back home runs in the 6th. That was nice to see. But the Giants kept, battling back, and they ended up tying the game again. The Padres shut them out in the 9th and the 10th. Melanson in the 9th, Detweiler in the 10th. I mentioned, Detweiler's, lack of command. He wasn't throwing strikes behind in counts, but he got out of it somehow. So I'm not going to say, I guess good for him, but that was not a strong outing whatsoever. 1.75% of his pitches in the inning were balls. That's the exact opposite of what you want to do. But in the 10th inning, it was very good baseball execution. Runner on second to start the inning. And Hassan Kim got a good bunt down, got Profar over to third, and then Caratini just put the ball in play, infield in. So the second baseman had to make a nice diving stop. And when he's on the ground like that, there's no way that you're going to get him out. There's no way you're going to get Profar out when he's going on contact. So Padres win this game 7-6. 77-75 is their record now, moving into the Atlanta series, and then which is their last home series of the regular season before they head out and play the Dodgers and Giants on the road to finish off their 2021 season. St. Louis did not help the Padres, or excuse me, Milwaukee didn't help the Padres at all. Again, I know that the Padres season is essentially over now, and a big part of that is because the St. Louis Cardinals swept Milwaukee. They won 12 games in a row, 12 games in a row for St. Louis, longest win streak since the 1980s. They're just clicking on all cylinders. The Brewers weren't, obviously. But I mean, the Cardinals lineup looks really as scary as any lineup right now. Their rotation looks really good. Adam Wainwright, hit a milestone today, I saw. So the Cardinals, if they keep playing like this, I mean, no one's going to want to play them. But they will have to face probably the Dodgers in a wild card game, which will suck for the Cardinals. But the Padres obviously wish that they were there. So the Cardinals just don't know how to lose games, and that's really and the Padres seem like they don't know how to win games because right now they're just not winning games. It's as simple as that. I think they're 3-8 in their last 11 games. Dennis Lin said before entering today they were 10-26 in their last 36, so now they're 11-26 in their last 37. So not pretty, and there's no way that you could expect to be in the playoffs when you're losing that many games. So that's as simple as that, really. Again, the Padres play Atlanta this weekend. Will there be a lot of people in attendance? Maybe, because it's the last homestand of the year, but I wouldn't expect a ton of people. Maybe the fireworks show on Saturday will, bring people out there, but there's not going to be as much interest now, especially with football season going right now. There's not going to be as much interest because the team's out of it. And it was evident when they didn't play Manny Machado today. So that's really the episode. I mean, it's disappointing. Again, another series loss. I can't say I'm confident that the Padres will win another series of their remaining 3 series the rest of the year. They very well, I mean, we're obviously not hoping this, but they very well could finish under 500 because of the, level of competition they're playing. I mean, you look at the Braves. The Braves are winning the NL East right now, but the Phillies are right on their back. And so the Braves are going to be playing really inspired baseball, no rest days for anyone. These are their biggest games of the season. So they're definitely not going to, rest at all. And then the Dodgers and Giants, they're literally, both of them are fighting against one another for the division. So the Padres are not going to get, any bad performances. You're going to get all their best pitchers. They're bringing it all out there because they're probably both going to end up winning over 100 games. And the team that wins over 100 games and has to play a 1-game playoff isn't going to be happy. This is going to be absolutely huge for the Dodgers and Giants to sweep the Padres. They will not care about the Padres' feelings, obviously, and nor should they. And they're fighting for the division. They're fighting for the luxury to automatically get into that first real round of the playoffs and at least get 3 games in the playoffs and host the playoffs instead of hosting a 1-game playoff against a really hot Cardinals team with Jack Flaherty, who's coming back. I believe he's coming back tomorrow. So that's all things to watch. Padres, it's going to be a tough rest of the season. Again, the season's over in terms of playoff contention, I think. I mean, that's not an unpopular opinion. The Cardinals they're just credit to them. They played the best baseball possible. They are right now at the best time possible, to get into the playoffs. So this has been episode 61 of the Talking Friars podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Ben Fadden here. Until next time, let's go Padres.